What's up? My name is Glueboy, welcome back to the channel, and continuing on with the last video, we're talking about the Space Wolves. The Space Wolves, or in their native tongue, the Volca Fenrica, they are the space Viking wolf-obsessed werewolf faction in 40k. And they're also one of the more popular Space Marine chapters, in my opinion, as I see a lot of people being big fans of them, for better, as every single in-person Space Wolf fan I've talked to absolutely rules. They're great. Super fun people, honestly. And for the bad side, there's a very specific subsect of people that really like the wolf imagery. You read a lot about it in some tabletop horror stories, but that's not what this video is. But if you want the story on Leman Russ, go watch my Leman video. I'm not going to get into that. Instead, I want to take a slight deviation of how I normally do my Space Marine videos. I want to get into what exactly makes a Space Wolf a Space Wolf. What goes into their process to become that? Because I think that goes more in depth of who they are as a chapter. So, the Space Wolves are a savage and ferocious bunch. They're also very hard stuck in their ways. Because mainly, they're all recruited from Fenris itself. So that breeds a very particular type of person. Then also, they're one of the few non-Codex Astartes compliant chapters. What that means is, at the end of the Horus Heresy, Gilman wrote a big fancy space book, laying out all the tactics you should employ in a military, and also split all the Space Marine legions into smaller individual chapters, where that way, no Space Marine legion would exist anymore and wouldn't have that much central power to do a Horus again. And Leman Russ wasn't a fan. So he's like, nah, I'm not gonna do it. Fuck you, Gilman. And Gilman was just like, all right, dog, okay. To where they are pretty much just the Space Wolves. And only very recently, with the emergence of Primaris Marines, have successor chapters. Which, fun little fact, if you out there hate Primaris stuff, don't worry, the Space Wolves also hate Primaris Marines. They don't trust them. So you got that in common with the Space Wolves, I guess. Check them out if you hate Primaris. But their recruitment, because it is a time. So first and foremost, on Fenris, in some major battles between the many tribes that live on Fenris, say there's a situation where a warrior cleaves down his foes but collapses in his near final breath. In that moment, dying happily knowing he's victorious. A Space Wolf, known as the Chooser of the Slain, in that moment, sees this and grabs him and whisks him away to their fortress monastery, the Fang, where, in kind of a Valhalla situation, it's like, all right, we're gonna make you a Space Wolf now. And they start undergoing some pretty good trials. A lot of these trials are killing giant monsters and fighting each other. That's a key point of it. Also, fun little thing, there's a Hammer and Bolter episode on one of the recruitment trials that Space Wolves do. It's not really written about, I think it was made for the show. So, the situation is the aspirants who want to become a Space Marine, their mentors are playing a game in the Fang. This game is played with fangs of many of the horrible monsters that live on Fenris. These playing pieces, the bigger they are, the stronger they are or something, and they're playing this game. They send their aspirants out to go find them more pieces for their game. And either they die in the process, or they come back triumphant with a big enough fang or multiple fangs that their teacher can win this game, and they're granted, to go up in the Space Marine training. And while the episode itself is kind of, it's fine. It's one of the more mid Hammer and Bolter episodes. The concept's dope. And the other big thing that they gotta do is they get injected with the Canis Helix, or the Space Wolf gene seed, which is horribly mutated and causes a whole lot of problems. Kind of similar to the Blood Angels, honestly. There's an issue with the Canis Helix, gets injected into the aspirant, and they must withstand this new thing in their head, called as the Beast. As now, there's this animalistic force inside of you that really wants to get let loose and just go to town on some people. And if you submit and actually let this beast come out, you become a Wolfen, which is a werewolf in Space Marine armor that is like barely cognizant. You're kind of just thrown out to kill shit. Like honestly, kind of the same deal with the Red Thirst as like the Blood Angels, except werewolf instead of vampire. And also, funnily enough, if you are a fan of Vampire the Masquerade, it's like that, actually. Despite not being the vampire faction, they have some tie-ins with that World of Darkness setting. A cool little thing I discovered. But other than that, you also have to go on more killing trials as you slowly get all of your Space Marine augmentations, which lets you fight bigger and scarier shit. As well, there's a very key part of their chapter culture that is the idea of having sagas told about you. As the greatest glory you can have is your name fully recognized and stories told of you for millennia to come. So that promotes you to want to kill bigger and scarier shit. The kind of thing that any other starters would be like, that's gonna be tough, dude. Like, we might have to gather a squad, and Space Wolves are like, let me at them. Which, those that survive are now even bigger badasses than normal Space Marines. And they got all the scars to prove it, and they're absolutely terrifying. So, other than just that recruitment process, I'm also going to get into the Chapter Master. Now, full disclosure here, going into this video, I had very little knowledge of the actual Space Wolves. I knew the bare minimum, I saw the Hammer and Bolter episode, that was about it. A commenter earlier on had put me onto this fact that I should talk about their Chapter Master, Logan Grimnar. Now, normally I hold off some Chapter Masters for their own video because I want to expand on them more in depth. I don't want to ever do a character a major disservice. But the issue is, I think Logan Grimnar's little stories he's been told through have really good through lines of what the Space Wolves are and how they act. So, thank you. I'm going to get into Logan Grimnar because this story fucking rules. So, Logan Grimnar was involved on the first War of Armageddon. That's the one before Sebastian Yarick and the giant orc Waz that came through. The one right before that. This one was demonic. Khorne and the World Eaters and fucking Angron all led this charge. And the Space Wolves were there to reinforce the Armageddon Steel Legions, and Logan was leading the charge. Which, in this fight, he fought a World Eaters Chaos Champion, single-handedly, who destroyed his very cool Frost Blade, the special weapon made on Fenris, to where he then proceeded to kill the Chaos Lord with his bare hands, take the guy's axe, and lead the charge with that instead. And later on, this would be reforged on Fenris to become his really cool-ass weapon, the Axe of Mordecai. This shit's strong and scary. But one thing that sets Logan apart from his predecessors is he is really tactical. He purposefully held back his men to make sure they weren't just charging headfirst to get themselves killed. He led intelligently, utilizing the resources in the area, also doing his best to minimize the harm let towards the Armageddon Steel Legion. While a lot of other Space Marine chapters would let the Imperial Guard soak some of the attacks, he was purposely keeping them out of harm's way. And also purposefully keeping them out of eye of what the actual main threat was. And this was for a very good reason, because eventually they were able to get their surgical strike in, defeat Angron as the Grey Knights showed up with the Inquisitors. And this proved to be one major issue, because the Inquisition came around and was like, hey, all these civilians, civvies, have seen chaos. We want to kill and sterilize them and put them into forced labor camps. And the Space Wolves are like, the fuck you want to do? No, these guys are cool. I respect them. I fought with them. These are my brothers. You were not touching them. And the Inquisition was like, I'm going to do it anyways. And the Space Wolves actually then went out to do civilian relief and get people off planet so they could escape the Inquisition, which the Inquisition was real pissed about, as their whole orders from their Grand Inquisitor that was overseeing this campaign was lock down all survivors and sterilize them, make it so they can't diffuse the information of what happened in Armageddon to the rest of the Imperium. And Logan Grimnar's efforts worked pretty well. A lot of people got away and survived. Though the Grey Knights were pretty okay with just mowing them down, Space Wolves included. But for real early on, Space Wolves did not retaliate. They just civilian relief. Until the Grey Knights pulled a funny little maneuver. Now, for a record of this would be a campaign the Grey Knights would later dub the Months of Shame. As the Grey Knights pulled a armistice deal like, hey, ceasefire, let's talk. But in reality, it was fake so they could get the Space Wolves into an opportune position to kill them. In their ships, they opened fire, and immediately, Logan was fucking pissed as he got him and a few of his men onto that ship, confronted the Grandmaster and said, what the fuck did you just do? Do you understand like the meaning of what you just did? What that oath of ceasefire means? And the guy was like, yeah, I did it, but had to. And before he could even realize it, he was already getting decapitated by the Axe of Mordecai. A Grey Knight Grandmaster, no fucking slouch in combat. And this led to a major just military engagement between the Inquisition and the Space Wolves. Eventually, the Inquisition got pushed back enough that the Grand Inquisitor was like, all right, I'm gonna siege Fenris, because that'll go great. But there were a bunch of Space Wolves on Fenris, led by Bjorn Fellhand, who's a pretty badass dreadnought, who was not letting them deal with their shit. And Logan Grimnar eventually came and reinforced and beat back the Inquisition pretty fucking handily. This whole situation was pretty embarrassing for the Inquisition, not gonna lie, and doubled the Grey Knights, because like, dude, come on. They acted real shittily throughout the entire campaign. However, I should say a lot of Space Wolves did die from these efforts. It's a very big battle and a big story. Go read that book. It's real good from everything I hear. But the reason I bring this up, because I think it brings up two very important things about the Space Wolves. The first is fierce loyalty. They fought with the Armageddon Steel Legion. They fought to protect the people on Armageddon. So the idea of someone coming in and betraying those people that they put their protection over is a slap in the face to a Space Wolf. So that fierce loyalty is what carries a lot of Space Wolves to do the things they do constantly. The other is a sheer hatred for scummy and dishonorable behavior. Like, how dare you be dishonorable? That is the biggest insult if you're trying to pull some Night Lords or some Alpha Legion shit. Like, get out of here. Those two things make up, I think, a lot of their massive chapter culture and what brings a lot of people to really love them. Because, like, who doesn't love the honorable badass that sticks up for, like, the right thing, but still in a 40k way, as they're still shitty pieces of shit because they're Space Marines. That's just kind of what they are. But that's pretty much the rough of it for their lore. We're gonna go right into their rules. So, the Space Wolves are honestly a very mid-tier Space Marine faction, as they're not as good as like the Dark Angels are, but they're also not as dog shit as the Raven Guard or Ultramarines are. So they have something at the very least. What I will say is they are incredibly fun. Their stat lines for their unique models are super fun. I've only fought into Space Wolves. I fought into them a few times. Every single time was some of the most fun I've had playing a 40k match. Like, I mean it when I say Space Wolf fans rule. But first and foremost, their chapter tactic, which they get +1 strength when they charge or heroically intervene, and they also, every single model can heroically intervene as if they're a character. Really fun melee rules. Puts them above some others in melee, but isn't particularly strong, but at the very least, they make up for a few of the other Space Marine chapters that at least their chapter tactic is useful for the entire game. And then a major other fun rule for them. They have some unique rule called sagas. Like, as I mentioned with Space Wolves, all they want is for massive deeds to be told about them. So every single warlord trait you give a character is tied to a saga of some sort, where you complete a certain mission during the game and it unlocks the full power of your warlord trait, which basically just gives you a stronger version of it. Now, I like the idea of this rule, but in like practice, this can be easily exploited by your opponent, so watch out, because if your opponent knows exactly what they have to do to get that thing, they're gonna either try to lure you into a trap or provoke you to do some dumb plays because you really want to get that warlord trait increased. It's not a thing you have to buy into, so it's elevates it from being shit. It's just, I don't think it's as good as you think. And then other than that, list building, there's not a lot of complexity for their list. You're gonna want to bring Wolfguard, give them Storm Shield and Lightning Claws. Bring some Wolfen along, because you should bring some of your unique models. And Logan Grimnar, bring him on his boat. It's better, costs more, but it's better. And this guy's no fucking slouch. Fighting Logan Grimnar is super fun. I had a great match that I'll slightly gush about, where I was able to convince the Space Wolf player that the peak thing to do for this match was we should have our Warlords duel one-on-one, honorable combat to determine who gets this objective point. And we duked it out for multiple turns. And I'll say, it was close. I was playing Custodes, by the way. My Trajan Valoris was holding his own, the absolute best, for Logan Grimnar. I think I had like 1 or 2 like HP left. It was close, I got lucky. But super fun, I'd recommend bringing him along. Also his model rules. But yeah, that's the Space Wolves for you. I think they're a super fun faction. They're not on my top Space Marine factions. I still think it's Raven Guard, Imperial Fist, and like Dark Angels. But they're really solid, and I understand why everyone like loves them so much. And honestly, I think you should too. Unless you like Thousand Suns. Keep that rivalry up, like alive, please. But yeah, that's about it. If you liked this video, like, comment, subscribe, do that stuff. And see ya.